I'm Mary Margaret Jones, Senior Principal with Hargreaves Associates, and I'd like to recognize my colleague, Matt Perotto, and our colleagues who are here from Envisage Architecture. So, and our whole team of local support, I also want to recognize at this point. So, very happy to be here. It's a phenomenal site. We spent the morning out there, and came away reminding ourselves that we don't have to do too much. There's already a phenomenal place there. People were out this morning enjoying this beautiful morning. We don't want to get in the way of ourselves. We want to create a place that has flexibility and the ability to create a robust landscape. So View Hamilton is about the natural and the manufactured, and really celebrating those themes, which are central to Hamilton's socio and economic identity. So taking those themes of the natural and the manufactured, amplifying them and celebrating them in a way that makes this place very specific and authentic to Hamilton. So starting with the idea of a view of Hamilton in time and space, start with time and take a look at the timeline, and I urge you to look at the boards where you can get closer to them, and think about Hamilton through time, and think about 10,000 BC, when the escarpment and the marshes and the landscape were what were prevalent. This escarpment being the only one in a major Canadian city that runs through the core of the city and actually divides the city into upper and lower levels. So that from 10,000 BC is still here. So think about native peoples, think about marshes, think about the escarpment. Then you move into the 1800s and you think about this as a wood wharf, as a place of shipbuilding, as a place of the beginning of industry, but a place of wood in a way still sort of organic. Then as you move into the 1900s, think of this place as steel industry, and think about concrete and steel and those materials, and think about the economy that resulted from that era in the 1900s, but also think about the loss of ecology and the loss of recreation, when one could no longer swim in the harbor, that came along with those gains in economy. So think about that View Hamilton through time. Then think about View Hamilton through space, and take a look at this diagram here. So we have the timeline here. Take a look at this diagram too. We were so struck when we visited the site how when you stand there, you see to your north and to your west a beautiful natural landscape. It of course is populated to some degree. It's not just nature, but it is beautiful and green, and there is nature there. Then as you look to the east and to the northeast, you see urban, and then as you look to the east, you see industrial. You see the manufacturing, and it's so present. The steel industry and the Haida are there, and they're reminders of Hamilton's industry. So you have nature and industry surrounding this site. So we started with an idea of contrasting those and having the north side of the project be urban and industrial, and the east side of the project being natural and wild. So we came up with this idea of a contrast of urban and wild, and creating a robust landscape that in and of itself would be a destination. So when you're in the urban part of the site, the north part of the site, you are looking at some of those natural features that are so beautiful. And when you're in the wild, when you're in nature, you are looking across to the industrial heritage and the industry that's still alive today. So this contrast, this compare and contrast will amplify these experiences and celebrate these themes that are authentically Hamilton and make it a memorable place. Now, it's also a place that has to be used in a variety of ways, and a place that frames those views. So many of the forms that we've chosen are about framing and directing those views, and about creating places that can be used in a variety of ways. So if you look at the plan, first of all, it's important to think about Houston and John Street as visual corridors, and then points of access. And then once you get to the North Park, oh, that's not me moving it, you have these framed views to the context and to the surroundings that are so particular. And then moving to the east, the Greenway, of course, and its future connection to the East Park, and this place of immersion in a nature and a natural wild that will be phenomenal within this urban setting. So one of the things I want to mention right now, actually I'll go to the next one, I want to mention first is we were very conscious of this issue of grade change and two levels, the level of the Waterfront Promenade and the level of the Upper Promenade. So the first choice we made was to raise the pier itself, to raise the Waterfront Promenade itself, so that we have begun to negotiate that grade change even in the grade we set for the promenade. So then there's less grade change between that promenade and the upper promenades. And we're negotiating that grade change with landscape and sloped walkways so that it's all accessible. And there are points of stairways and there are points of seating terraces, but they're always integrated with ramped walkways and ramped landscape. So in this view, you can see this sort of northern promenade, this northern landscape, this northern urban plaza, and the contrast to the eastern side of this wild woodland, a woodland of birches, a woodland of beautiful ash trees and birch trees and aspen trees, sorry, not ash, aspen trees, punctuated with evergreen trees so that we have color in winter, but a robust landscape that will change over time, that will mature over time, and reflect this sort of escarpment nature. So on the north, moving from the end, from the west end, where there are utilitarian structures that we have to embed within this landscape. A woodland is helping us do that, embedding those infrastructural conditions. It's also the place where we have located a future pavilion. We were asked to think about a future pavilion and where that might be. We think this would be a great anchor on the west end and lead you to the existing restaurant and the hockey rink, etc. So that's the place where a future pavilion would be. Then continuing to the east, we have the wedge lawn. And the wedge lawn is shaped to both direct your view across to the natural landscape and set up a view to the Skyway Bridge, so that you have a wedge lawn doing a sloped job, doing a seating job, and doing a framing of views job. So it's a place to hang out and experience those conditions. Then there is the plaza that greets Houston, and as well as the plaza that greets John Street, and both steps and terraces and sloped walkways at those conditions. And an urban plaza that is and a waterfront promenade that are comprised of pavers. So think about the waterfront promenade itself as solid, pavers that are solid. So using the concrete heritage in a way that creates a solid paving. Then as you move toward the land from that, those same pavers are set in a way that allows them to be permeable, but still totally accessible, not only for wheeled conditions, but of baby carriages and wheelchairs, but also for maintenance and emergency. And then as you moved to the islands, the eddies of movement, the paver actually has an absence of paving in some places to allow landscape. So the landscape actually scarifies the surface and intervenes within the manufactured. So even on the urban side, even on the urban plaza side, this idea of the contrast of nature and manufactured. So nature constantly trying to interrupt the manufactured in a way that reflects the past of this site. So then continuing east, you come to the play area, which is a play area made of natural elements, wood and stone, so again reflecting these materials that comprise this site through history, and allow kids to explore, run, jump, play in ways that where they are setting up the experience themselves as much as you are prescribing it. And again, it resonates with the actual conditions of the site and the history of the site. And then continuing moving east, you come to the wetland lens. And this wetland lens, imagine really in a way as a lens. It is telescoping, giving you a view of what is below or what would have been there in the past. This wetland is also doing a job So all the water that is going through the permeable paving system is directed to this wetland, filtered through the plants before going into the harbor, so that it's an operational, functional landscape of stormwater management. And you see along that back edge, seating terraces where parents can gather, watch their kids play, and then places to sit around the wetland as well. Then you come to the corner where we begin to introduce this shift from the manufactured to the natural. Wait, I have to go back for a minute because I have to address, of course, the barge. The barge is where we have put this sort of outdoor living room, this place using the corten steel trusses that exist on the site, using those, putting sailcloth on them so that they're still luminescent, they're still translucent, but they provide shelter, an outdoor living room on this floating barge. And I'll talk about the art element of that in a minute, but it would be a great place to come after ice skating in the hockey rink, whether it be fire pits and hot chocolate, or in the summertime to be in the shade and to hang out in lounge chairs on the water in this way that recalls the fact that you once recreated on and in this water. Now, it can be moved in winter if it needs to be. We believe it can be accommodated or structured in such a way that it can stay in the winter. It could also be moved easily. And if that still doesn't get through permitting, it could be on the promenade, of course. It could be on the urban plaza. But we think to be out on this water and recall what it was like to recreate on and in this water is an opportunity that we shouldn't give up on right away. Okay, so moving east, continuing to move east, we come to that transition from urban to nature. And we have a sloped meadow. So beautiful plant material made up of traditional natural plants from meadow landscapes. Embedded within that, a long sloped walkway. I say long only because it's really important to us that these be sloped walkways and not ramps. And then continuing around the corner, these shard-like landforms that negotiate the difference in grade and create this forested or woodland landscape where one can immerse oneself in what a natural landscape would have been like in this area. And then the sort of some of the, in particular, one of the faces of those is we're using escarpment stone to sort of use it as a display of the escarpment landscape. Okay. These diagrams show you the layers of systems on the site. So from water to circulation to landscape to paving systems. So you see how those layer one with another and how they work one with another and support each other in a functional way. So we start with the third panel, which is all about the northern side, the urban condition, the urban plaza. So this is the part of the project that's about celebration, it's about gathering, it's about crowds, it's about festivals, but it also has to feel good when it's only 2 people, 3 people on a day-to-day basis. So it has that negotiation of scale from large to small, and again deals with the kind of awesome openness of this phenomenal harbor front. So you see in this view, you see this seating terraces, you see a use of material that is about concrete and steel, that manufactured condition. You see the outdoor living room that we've created on the barge using the corten steel trusses and also supporting them with a series of corten steel panels. And in those panels would be cut out words, and the words would be words that mean different things to different people depending upon your point of view. We would hope to, this is in budget, but we would hope to work with Native American linguists and others to come up with words that are resonant to the history of this place, to all peoples, and words that might talk about, also speak to the future. So we like the idea of words that mean different things depending upon your point of view or your frame of reference. So we're framing views, we're framing perspectives, and we're framing points of reference. You also see here this idea of the paver that gets interrupted by landscape, that gets sort of, if you will, intervened upon by nature, but is still very robust. We're building a system like this in 2 projects, one in Russia and one in California, so we know it works. And it creates this kind of permeability. Not only does it create a permeability, it creates a soft hardness that will help people feel good in this place. This is a rendering that makes you feel like you're in a forest. You're in a birch and aspen forest. And imagine the telling of tales that would happen here. Imagine as kids exploring this landscape of stone and trees and this kind of magical sense we all have as human beings of wanting to be immersed in landscape and in a place that's other than the city, in a place that's about nature and play and that which makes all of us common as human beings and children at heart. So imagine this landscape that will grow over time. We often talk about our projects as setting landscapes in motion. We're not building it and that's the end. We're actually starting something that will be set in motion and that will evolve over time and that will be timeless and graceful and beautiful and at the same time conceptually strong so that this is a memorable place that people will want to come back to. And here you see in this view, of course, the fall colors will be beautiful, and the escarpment wall that is adjacent to one of those sloped walks. This would be a place of interpretation, a place of art, and a place of natural history. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you see a diagram that talks about how this project can be used flexibly for different events at different scales. So again, we think about time, place, and scale. So you move from the right to the most communal, to the left to the most individual. So going from tall ship festivals to Rib Fest to markets to performances. Imagine a screen that's set up on the barge so that when you're sitting on the terraces or on the lawn or on the slopes, on the urban plaza, you're watching what's happening on the screen on the barge, continuing to yoga classes, to telling of tales, to reading, to having tours about the history of the site, to waiting to get on the Haida, but sitting in this phenomenal landscape that is right at the Haida and the steel industry, yet you were in the woods and in the birch and aspen forest looking out to that. So I think it's, first of all, I want to say that our project is completely within budget. Everything you see would be built within the budget. We build projects all over the world, and I think part of the reason we're able to do that is because we work with budgets, and we also believe in the power of landscape. We don't think you need to have a million things to do so much as a place to do whatever your imagination comes up with. So to create a robust landscape, a place that is about what draws us to a site like this, which is water, and what makes us feel great when we're in a site like this, which is shade, texture, smells, sounds, and to create a landscape made up of different landscape typologies that or plant material typologies that are inherent to the region, and to tell that story in a way that's about the natural history of the site, but also about the industrial manufacturing history of the site and the settlement history of the site, the Native people's history of the site. So view Hamilton in time and in space.
Any questions? Linda.
I had a question for clarification regarding your hard, soft, urban plaza. I guess I'm trying to understand how that would work and how the little plants wouldn't get crushed by the crowd. So if you can explain that a little bit more, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. So I might go to a diagram that I actually didn't talk about, but that is there, which is here, because you didn't exactly ask this question of how it works in terms of a water movement and conveyance system. You asked more, how does it work in a robust kind of, does it hold up? So it's unit pavers. So it's the same unit paver throughout the project. At the Waterfront Promenade, it's set on concrete and it's solid, and so all the vehicles that need to go on the Waterfront Promenade can. Then as you move toward the land, you still have trails or pathways that need to be totally accessible, and it's still pavers set one to another, but in this case set on a porous space so water can get through and be collected and go to the blah, 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 into the blah, blah, blah. And then you have places where you have taken out a piece of the paver. So it's still one paver. Imagine you've taken out this much of the paver, and you've filled it with dirt and very hardy low grasses. These are not plants so much as they are hardy low grasses. So it's the most robust landscape material you could have, and we actually think it's okay if it wears and tears in different ways, depending upon how people move across it. That's part of the idea, that it's part of a natural system. It's organic. Thank you.
I have a question about the shore wall. You mentioned that you wanted to raise the shore wall in order to deal with the grade change. How much are you looking at raising?
Turning this over to Matt.
That's a great question. So we've raised the base elevation of the whole park up around 2 feet, 2.5 feet. So not necessarily substantial, but enough that it rises up above the 100-year floodplain and the oblique wave height that we established from the wave overtopping analysis. And you can see, if I jump back at the sides, we return down to the existing grade at below 4%, so a gentle slope. But throughout the entire proposal, we're sitting up at around the same elevation, and then we break around here to come down to the elevation at the Haida.
And I have to apologize. We've clearly corrupted Matt, so he's now speaking in feet.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We had a technical meeting about this last week, so we just wanted to clarify we did have some concerns, the same concerns that Linda brought up about the hard-soft landscape, and you've agreed to work with us to try and make that work for city standards.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Oh, James.
Thanks, Mary Margaret, for your presentation. Just a quick clarification. If the barge does not happen, then the pavilion buildings, you said, come to the Waterfront Promenade. Just clarify that.
It's dashed here. So just imagine moving it from here to here. Sort of in place of those trees, or we'd shift the tree slightly. But we still think it's sort of in the right place, being central like that, being a kind of hub, being a place of gathering, being this outdoor room that is kind of a focus. We think that's the right place, whether it's on the water or whether it's on the land.
Yeah. Anybody from the audience have any questions? Questions of clarifications? If you've got comments, we've got lots of forms and we want you to write them down. But if you're not understanding something about the design, we're happy to entertain a question.
I think it would be totally easy. There's 2 out there now. Well, there aren't exactly barges that are there now, but there's 2 now. I think it would be fantastic.
It's one of those future possibilities.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.